So in Unit 5, Lesson 3, we're going to talk about the unit circle and then figure out why trigonometry is called trigonometry when we're using a circle, because tri means triangle, and oh my god, math is so confusing. It's not. Here we go. Back in the day of the Greeks, you might have learned that they sailed their ships, or not even just the Greeks, everybody sailed their ship by using the stars. And this little object right here that this guy is holding is a sextant. And to this day, we can still use this sextant to help navigate and find out where we are. That's what it looks like close up. And in the modern world, it's still used a lot in sailing. And it's actually used in engineering. You may see them a lot on the side of the road when they're trying to survey. So how does this sextant work? Well, it's done by creating a triangle. That's how we get the word trigonometry. Tri means three, gon means side, and metry means measure. So it's a three-sided measure. Three sides is a triangle. So as you saw, we had our man with his sextant looking up at a star. So what they would do is they would drop a line to the horizontal. Hey, that looks familiar. Isn't this what we did in that little lab? So we're going to drop a line there. Let's make that line stand out a little bit. And then we would connect it with the origin, because that was where he was looking from. And voila, we've created a triangle. What we have to remember is what type of triangle we've created. Well, we've created a right triangle. Thus, we have Pythagorean's theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. C. And it doesn't matter which side is A or B. What does matter is that this angle created here, which we will call theta. So in this case, we made A the adjacent side and B the opposite side. So this point up here now plays a dual role. If we were to find this point on our unit circle, we could do so by moving over x and then moving up y if we were on a Cartesian plane, but on a unit circle, we take the cosine of the angle followed by the sine of the angle. And I think you can see why. X is the adjacent side to the angle, and that's what cosine is, if you remember from 8th grade or whenever you learned it, probably 7th grade. The sine of an angle is the opposite over the hypotenuse. The cosine of an angle is the adjacent over the hypotenuse. And we'll just throw a tangent down there. You learn that to be the opposite over adjacent. Although today we are just going to work with the sine and the cosine. And what you have to learn is it always goes cosine, sine, and that's because cosine is with the x and sine is with the y. All right, so here's a little GeoGebra about a unit circle that was pretty cool. It's showing us how we travel along, and then we're going to talk about our cosine and sine. All right, so we're going to move, and we're going to start this off pretty easy. Let's go, and let's do 1/4, come on back, 1/4 pi. So if I moved 1/4 of pi, which is 180 divided by 2 twice, so that's 45 degrees. What I have here is a height measurement, how high I went, actually, and how far across I went. So basically, this is what we're saying. We're saying here that we had 1/4 pi. And if we took the cosine of 1/4 pi and the sine of 1/4 pi, we will get the point. All right, so if we look back here, roughly, if I counted over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that's about 0.7, just a little more than 0.7. So that was the distance I moved along the x-axis, 0.7. How about my height? Well, there's my height. It went up there, so I went up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, again, 0.7. And this is a very rough estimation, but when we take out our calculator and we indeed do, I gotta make sure, there we go, what the cosine of pi over 4 is, look at that, 0.70, pretty close to that 0.7. And I think you'll believe me now when I take the sine of pi divided by 4, I'll get 0.7071. Pretty cool. I can go back here and I can move this fish anywhere I want. But what's cool is I can move it here and I can say 0 degrees. If I move to 0 degrees, that means I have a height of 0 and a horizontal distance of 1. So what we said here was at 0 radians or 0 degrees, whichever you want to call it, the cosine and the sine, cosine is 1 and the sine is 0. So that is the point 1, 0 over 1 up 0. We can move that fish around. Let's go to 5/6 pi. So I went around 5/6 of pi, and what did I get here? Now look at my distance over here. My distance over here is negative 678, a little more than 8.5. So let's call it 8/6. And my height was exactly a half. So if I came back here and I said, all right, cosine of 5 pi over 6 and the sine of 5 pi over 6, well, that will reveal the point that I went over approximately 0.86 and I went up approximately a half. And remember, this was in the negative direction, so it's negative 0.86. And again, we can come over here, we take the cosine of 5 pi divided by 6. Boom, negative 8.66 roughly. And I can take the sine, boom, and it's 1/2. So this is what we're really talking about. We're talking about measurements of a triangle. So what was forming here every single time was, you can see here, there was a triangle. Now I know it's confusing. We'll go over it more in class tomorrow. But this is called a unit circle. Obviously, again, we've been talking about a unit circle. And on it, it has our most common measurements: 30, 45, 60, 90, 120, 135, 150. I think you can see the pattern here. If you notice something too, we've got radical 3 over 2 and 1/2, and that's with 30. So do you remember this from geometry? Do you remember if this was 30 degrees, this was 60, this was a 90, a 30, 60, 90? So across from 30 was 1, across from 90 was 2, and across from 60 was radical 3. Did you have that? You might have been called the 1 to 3 to radical 2 ratio. Well, look, that's what you have here with a 30-degree triangle. So the cosine of 30 is adjacent over hypotenuse. Bing! And the sine of 30 is opposite over hypotenuse. Bing! Now you may be saying here, wait a second. You told me that my unit circle always has a hypotenuse of 1. Well, yeah. So really what we're saying here is that we traveled a distance of radical 3 over 2, and then we went up a height of 1/2, and our hypotenuse is 1. So you're going to have to memorize this unit circle. But tomorrow in class, we're going to talk about it a lot more in depth. So make sure that you take time to copy this down. We're going to talk about it a lot tomorrow in class.